Thank you so much, Beth. Really important information for individuals to keep in mind. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about what organizations and nonprofits can do, and then also a little bit about what tribal nations can think about before I turn it over to Lenny. So I'll start with organizations and nonprofits and other businesses, right? So businesses also have Fourth Amendment constitutional protections, but there are some unique things that organizations should keep in mind. Um, and I'll go over that now. So generally, police and ICE can enter the public areas of your organization or your business without permission. So thinking of like if you're a restaurant or other business where the public's generally allowed to come in, ICE and other law enforcement are generally allowed as well. But law enforcement cannot enter private areas of your business without a valid judicial warrant, similar to your home. So, what does that mean for organizations, right? It's important, especially for nonprofits that may be providing services, to think about how you're operating currently and whether or not you want to change that, or, if you're currently operating in a way that areas are private, how you can beef that up a little bit. So, one of the things that you can do is designate areas in your organization that are public and that are private, right? And some things that you look for and that courts look for when thinking about that are signs, for example, that say no trespassing, or signs that say private spaces. Those are things that would, tend to indicate that this is something that's a private area that is not open for the public. You can also begin to, keep your doors locked or create a system where you are requiring individuals to check in if they're coming to seek your services or coming to your business, so that that would indicate, these are actually more of a private area rather than a public. We have a system set up that, we would like you to check in or create an appointment. These are private areas where there's no trespassing, and all of that would help to show that these are indeed private areas that have greater Fourth Amendment protections from illegal searches. Now, if ICE or law enforcement shows up to your business, it might be a good thing to think about to designate a member of your staff or members of your staff that can be designated to speak with law enforcement or police if they arrive. We're seeing lots of suggestions on doing that. And those individuals can be then trained and work to talk with ICE, let them know that this is a private business, that we do not consent to any searches or ICE coming in, and kind of de-escalate the situation. If ICE says they have a warrant, those designated members can be tasked with looking at those warrants in a similar manner, asking them to pass it under the door or put it up on the window. And so thinking about designating individuals can be something that is helpful as well. And then finally, looking at your policies to, create that designated member that may be one that is designated to speak with law enforcement, identifying your policies that you're protecting your members or your constituents' privacy, and that your spaces are private. So these are all things that organizations and nonprofits and businesses can think about and implement. And I put in the chat the link to our website where we have those resources for organizations and individuals to look at as well. It's actually something we at NARF are currently looking at as well. Let me see if I've missed anything here. I don't think so. I think that covers it. So I think you can move on to thinking about what tribal nations can do, right? We've been getting a lot of questions. I think I'm seeing questions in the chat about that. And I think Lenny may have some thoughts on this too, but here are some things that we've been thinking about and put together for you as well. So I think one of the big things that you should think about is requesting and demanding consultation from the Department of Homeland Security and the Office of Justice Services, right? They both have, Department of Homeland Security has policies on consultation, and I have a whole slide on this I'll touch on a little bit. And then the Office of Justice Services has a statutory mandate to consult with tribal nations as well. So, thinking about requesting consultation to inquire about whether DHS is planning to go on reservations. How are they approaching their encounters with your tribal members? We're hearing reports that they're not or accepting or they're questioning tribal IDs and why they are doing that. How have they been trained on that, right? So really just asking for that consultation to really think about and protect your members and let them know what you're hearing. What are they planning for our reservations or our tribal lands? How are they approaching their encounters with Native Americans and who are citizens of the United States? Those types of things. So definitely think about that. Other things that we are hearing that some tribes are doing is establishing hotlines for tribal members that may be interacting with ICE or that are being detained, right? And so you could have a hotline set up where you could provide information on enrollment or tribal IDs at the ready. Maybe you have attorneys that they can speak to, or maybe you have referrals for IHS or other healthcare facilities that you could refer them to as well. So a hotline could be something that can be immensely useful for members and that some tribes are doing. And then we're also seeing tribal nations set up like ID drives, right? I've seen several tribes go out to Minneapolis and have ID drives. And I think that's a really important and great thing that tribal nations can do. We have many elders that may have been born on reservation in their homes that don't have birth certificates, or they may not have a passport, and maybe they only have a tribal ID, or maybe they have no ID at all. And so while tribal IDs may not be foolproof as we've seen in these interactions, it's at least something that I think tribes can work to provide to their members and that ICE should be accepting, right? That's why we should be asking for consultation on why they're not. So having those ID drives, I think, is a really great idea that I've seen several tribes do already as well. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Couple other things based on our experience, I think, is probably knowing beforehand, at least within your area, where there are ICE detention centers. In case your members are detained, initially it was folks didn't know where people are being taken in Minneapolis and figured out it was the Whipple building out there. So having an idea of where to send an attorney if someone is detained is important and helpful. One thing we've also seen is some tribes are considering bringing on a criminal defense attorney, just having them on retainer for tribal members that may be detained or face criminal charges because of detainment, right? Having someone at the ready. There are also other federal public defenders that can get appointed. And of course, you can always confer with us here at NARF. We've been working with a network of attorneys on the ground in Minneapolis to be able to provide attorneys that can go in, meet with individuals that are detained, and represent them criminally too as well. So we're also looking to build up those networks in other parts of the country as well. But having that in place, thinking about your own networks with your own tribal attorneys, and who they may know in different areas is also, I think, really important and helpful as well. And then finally, if someone is detained, we've been hearing really horrific stories from individuals, from tribal members about them being injured and the ridicule they're facing for hours. Having at the ready the services that you can provide and refer them to, whether it's for injuries they may have or for mental health issues that they have to deal with after these encounters, getting those ready and those referrals ready, I think is really important too, and something we're suggesting. And then finally, it's not on here, but I'm seeing a lot of questions about jurisdiction and authority, federal authority, and I know Lenny's going to cover that a little bit, but those are complicated questions. Many tribes have treaty rights that they can lift up, and each tribe has unique circumstances, so those questions get complicated. So I definitely suggest tribes should be consulting with their attorneys to think about how they may implement legislation that enforces their treaty rights or protects the health and welfare of their members. Each situation can be different and it can vary. Generally, I think it's what we're seeing is federal law enforcement can enforce federal law on reservations, but each situation is unique, and so making sure you're consulting with your tribal attorneys about your situation and what you can do. So let's see. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, and then I'll turn it over to Lenny. This is the slide I was referring to about consultation. And so the Department of Homeland Security has specific policies and directives on consultation. You can see the Directive 7104 here referenced. You can find that online. That directive outlines the responsibilities of the Department of Homeland Security to consult with tribal nations regarding their actions. Rodney Lockett is the current Director of Tribal Affairs at DHS. His information is also on their website, but we've put it here for you all to have at the ready. And then also the Office of Justice Services, I mentioned, within the Department of Interior, has a statutory obligation to timely and meaningfully consult with tribal nations for any actions that affect public safety and justice within Indian country. So we would suggest certainly reaching out to DHS, reaching out to OJS, and demanding consultation, asking them about whether or not they're planning to come into Indian country and consult on that, asking them about their encounters with tribal members, why they're not accepting tribal IDs, and just getting that on record and requesting that consultation. It's really, our tribal nations have an obligation and are looking to protect their members. And this is one way they can reach out to the Department of Homeland Security and Interior to say, hey, we want to protect our members. They are citizens. What are you doing? Are you coming to Indian country? Those types of things. So that's certainly one thing we recommend. So I think that's it. You can go to the next slide. Myself and Beth, and we have a team here working on these issues. So feel free to reach out as well, or give us a call. And again, we really appreciate it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lenny.